So now that we have moved all of our landings up to the correct level, we can select that polyline. We can just scroll around, holding down Alt and the middle mouse button, and we can see that clearly some of it is cut and some of it is fill. What I've done, just so that I can be clear, is I have renamed that line up here under the modify panel. I've renamed it to driver spline, and what I'm going to do with that is I am going to make a couple of copies of it. To make copies of the driver spline, all I need to do is right click and go to clone, and I want to just make a straight copy, not an instance or a reference. And what I'd want to do is put the name in here. So this might be my fill outline. And it just makes a copy of itself in exactly the same spot. But I know I've actually got that selected because up here it says fill outline, and over in my Scene Explorer it says fill outline. I'm actually just going to delete that one because I've already done this before. What I want to now do is come back to the driver spline, and I want to make a second copy of it, right clicking, clone, and this time when I make my copy I want it to be called the cut outline. I'm just going to cancel that because, as I said, I've got one already. Once that's done, I can turn off my driver spline. I'm going to use it later to make a handrail, but I don't want it on at the moment. Now what I need to do is take this outline that I've made, which is the one that's going to be the fill outline, and I need to add a bevel to it. So if I come up here to my modifier panel and I type in BE, bevel will come up. And in the case of the fill object, that needs to be something that has a negative height. I've just done this previously, so it's already given itself a negative height of 6 and an outline of 4. If I turn off my surface for a moment and I hold down Alt and middle mouse button and scroll around, you can see that the bottom is all filling perfectly. But this is quite dependent on the outline, and everybody's outline and height is going to be different. So if I go any further with that outline, what I start to get is essentially a bucket. Excuse me, sorry. So it's not going to be able to Boolean because it doesn't consider itself to be a solid. I'll bring that down to 0.4, and you'll see that that has a closed base. I need to do exactly the same thing with my cutting outline. In this case I've called it a cutter. For this one I also need to add a bevel, and it's making a bevel, it's making an automatic bevel that is the same as the filler, but I need a different sort of bevel. For this one I need an upwards facing bevel. So if I make this 2 and 0.4, you'll see that what I get is basically 2 bevels that sit on top of one another. In digital space, surfaces have infinite thinness, so we do need to work around that to a certain extent. The way I do that is by making these two surfaces intersect slightly. So we'll just zoom in a bit, and I'm looking at those two things meeting each other perfectly, and selecting the cutter object, I'm just going to bring it down 0.03. Again, this is something that will be different for each person, but that works for this model. Okay. I can turn my surface back on again now, and I am actually ready to make my Boolean. So first of all, what I need to do is open my materials palette up here under under this one, or by pressing M. And what is already set up in the scene is what's called a multi-sub-object material. And all that is a material that applies, you can have a single object, but it applies different materials to each sub-object. So what we will do is we will take the cut material and grabbing this yellow here, we'll put it onto our cutter, and we will take this fill material here and put it onto our fill object, and they're set up as pretty strong colours just so that you can see the variation. Once that's done, I can come up, I can close this because the grass has already been applied to the terrain, and I can select this topographic surface which was created from the contours. What I'm going to do is I'm going to also make a clone of it, just so that I've got a backup within the same file. So this new one will be called Boolean base. And it's just a straight copy again. Once that's done, I will turn off the original surface. I could probably do the same thing for my cutter and filler. It's probably worth doing, so let's do that now. So we'll just select it and clone. Instead of calling it cutter 1, we'll call it cutter bull. And we'll take the bottom one, clone, and we'll call that filler bull. And then we can turn off the originals. Alright, so we're going to be working with complete copies. Selecting the terrain, I can then come over to my Create panel, and this is kind of unusual, but we come over to the Create panel, and under the standard primitives, we come to the compound objects. In compound objects, we have what's called the Boolean. We can just press on that, and it is quite nice. It's been updated over the last couple of years, and it works quite well. For some of you, though, we may need to go back to the Pro Boolean, as it works in a very similar way. It's just a little bit older, and it has a few more capabilities than this Boolean, this ordinary Boolean. All right. So with my excuse me, terrain selected, what I want to do is I want to subtract my cutting object. So what I need to come down here is set it to subtract, and then I need to add an operand, and I can just select my cutting object. So you can see there that all looks lovely, and then I want to holster that operand adding by clicking on, oh no, sorry about that. So just select, having your Boolean selected again. We just need to right click, I think, to stop adding operands. Okay, so with that selected, we now need to do a union. So we're going to add operands. We're going to go to come in here. That's right. So we need to unhighlight that, come to union, add operands, and then add our fill object. And then just unhighlight that and right click in your scene to stop picking. What that's created is a single object. So what we have here is, if I click on this, you can see that the line work for everything goes white, and that just means that it is one single object. And I've called it Boolean base, so if I turn that off here, the whole thing turns off. And that's that.